can give you a little background. When the incident happened, eventually we transferred the investigative side to the county sheriff. And the reason for that is a lot of people talk about how can the police investigate themselves. So we transferred it to the county sheriff. He completed his investigation and he gave his file to the county prosecutor. And the county prosecutor's job is to determine if there's probable cause to indict based on the evidence and the information in the file.
Now, 1 second. That's Timothy McGinty, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Now, and in his process of doing that, he can either refer it straight to the grand jury, and the grand jury makes that determination, or he can do some other stuff. What he chose to do is to not only look at the sheriff's file, but hire a couple of consultants so that they can come in and look at all the information. So they came in, they looked at what the sheriff did, they probably asked more questions, they did other things, and at the conclusion of that, then they have a finding in their file. Well, normally, what the county sheriff's file and the consultant's file would go to the grand jury, then the grand jury look at it as a whole and make a determination as to whether or not to indict or not the police officers, right? Now, what the county prosecutor chose to do, however, was release the results of the finding of the consultants that basically said there was no legal, no criminal wrongdoing by the police officers.
I think they said they were, the police officers were reasonable in basically shooting him.
That's right. So that's a very unusual move. And where the Rice family has a concern, and I believe rightfully so, is that in some way now you're tainting the process, and it appears as if you're getting the public ready for a no indictment. Now, so so right now, that's a major concern of not only the Rice family, but others, because there's been a call for a special prosecutor to come in and review it and remove Mr. McGinty from the case. Now, this is the same thing that I raised when we had the East Cleveland shooting. And the Attorney General DeWine did similar thing. He made a statement. He released the information before the investigations were completed or before the county prosecutor or the grand jury decided. And at that time, people didn't have the same reaction to it that they're having now. So I think it's good that people are now paying attention to the process, because, as I have said and the chief has said for some time, this isn't just not a Cleveland Division of Police or police division anywhere in this country issue. This is about the system and how the system does not function in a way that people have confidence that there will be justice dispensed from the system. And this act is something that is lend credence to that concern. And that's why they're going to have the press conference and I guess a rally. Now, the final thing is, once the whole criminal side is over with, of which the city has nothing to do with, and other than we provide information, once that's over with, then we will look at the officers involved in the shooting to determine if there's any violation of general police orders, tactics, process, and procedures. And if there are, we will hold a hearing for those officers and have administrative discipline associated with it if warranted. So we'll go from, and that could go anywhere from a letter in your file determination to demotion to days off without pay. And we haven't determined what that is because we have not gone through our due process yet. But that will occur after this whole criminal process is completed. And the problem that people are having is that they believe that the criminal process now is tainted. And as you mentioned, skewed to the point of saying, well, why are you even going through the rest of it? Is it a charade? And that's the big problem that people are having now.
All right, so you've basically broken down top to bottom the process of kind of what's happening and what's to come.
That's right.
Today, 12 o'clock, we had the press conference with Tamir Rice and I'm assuming some of his other family members. Where you, Police Chief Williams, what do you hope? What message do you hope is delivered today? Like when I guess during the press conference, even after, for the city, for the people who feel how you know what I'm saying, what you just said, Mayor. But just overall, like with everything that's kind of happening in our city as a whole, but more importantly this, because it's a more special situation because of the circumstances and just kind of how it's all breaking down. But what do you hope people take from today, what happens today?
Well, I really don't know the message that the Rice family is going to give. But what I do know is that people should understand, like the mayor says, there is a process here. And they need to understand the parts of that process and who has responsibility for the parts of that process. I think some people mistakenly think that the city of Cleveland is now critically involved in what's happening now, and we're not. Right now, this is all within the purview of the county prosecutor's office and the county system.
Okay.
And like the mayor says, once that criminal process is completed, then it will come back to the city and the division of police, and we will convene that administrative hearing where we'll look at possible violations of our policies, procedures, our tactics, our training, and if those officers are found in violation of those, then there will be consequences for those violations. So what I want people to get out of today, especially with the mayor and myself being here, is that there is a process.
Okay.
And once you start to understand the parts of that process, and if you disagree with parts of that process, then people need to step in and do things that can change parts of that process. And most of that is through legislation and through the, through people's votes.
Yeah.
And speaking out against this thing and getting out there and organizing people to actually do something to physically change that process.
And if I can add to that, whenever we have, whether there's shootings or use of force that is inappropriate, those kind of things, the police become the target, and rightfully so if they're inappropriate.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious, right?
Yeah.
It's very obvious, and it is easy to identify. What is more difficult to identify, and what the chief is pointing out, is that the real inability to have true justice is because of the system. And that if we're going to look at real reform, we have to look and see whether or not the criminal justice system in this case, not just in Tamir Rice, but in the East Cleveland shooting, you can just name any of them, whether or not there is something happening within the system that is allowing for justice not to be delivered. And so that has been my position all the time. Rather than just looking at the police, because they're the most popular thing to look at, and it's the easiest thing. And it's the easy thing to see. We should be looking at, particularly as African Americans,